I don't think I'll ever forget the way my grandmother laughed that day. Full, condescending, and straight into my face like I'd just said the dumbest thing imaginable. But the part that really stuck with me wasn't the laughter. It was the silence that came after. The heavy, stunned silence as I pulled out my phone, opened the article, and held it up for the whole table to see. You could hear the clink of her fork hitting the floor as her jaw locked up. You could see my dad's nostrils flare before he slammed his fist on the table so hard the wine glasses trembled. And you could hear my voice, calm, clear, and sharper than I intended, as I said something I can't take back, even if I wanted to. But I'll get to that. First, let me tell you how we got there. My name's Dylan. I'm 27 now, but most of this story takes place over the last few years, starting when I was around 22. And if I had to sum up my family in one sentence, it'd probably be this. We're the kind of people who pretend everything's fine, as long as you don't talk about it. My dad runs his mouth when he drinks. My mom plays peacekeeper even when it means lying to your face. And my sister? Well, let's just say Brielle's been the princess of the family since the day she was born. She's 2 years younger than me, but somehow always treated like she's older, wiser, and more fragile. If I got a B+ on a test, my dad would ask what went wrong. If Brielle skipped school for a spa day, he'd offer to pay for the massage. If I stayed home to work on a project, I was antisocial. If she ghosted everyone for a week, she was protecting her energy. You get the idea. I used to think maybe I was just imagining it, that quiet part of you that wonders if you're being too sensitive. But the older I got, the more obvious it became. By the time Brielle turned 20, she was already living the kind of life you see on Instagram stories and think, must be nice. Private flights to Malibu, brunch with influencers, a skincare fridge that cost more than my laptop. All of it funded by her boyfriend at the time, Lucas, a trust fund guy with perfect teeth and a weird obsession with yacht parties. My parents adored him. My dad would beam every time Lucas called him sir. And my mom once cried at dinner because Brielle finally found someone who treats her like the queen she is. I was in my second year of trying to bootstrap a tech company from my bedroom while working 2 jobs to pay rent. Nobody really asked how that was going. At family dinners, I try to bring it up, mention a beta launch or a new investor meeting, but the conversation always circled back to Brielle, her engagement, her designer dress, her pre-wedding cleanse. At one point, my dad even said, "You'll get there one day, Dylan. Just be patient like your sister." That line stuck with me. Be patient like your sister. As if flying to Paris to say yes on a balcony overlooking the Eiffel Tower was the product of grit and determination. As if I hadn't spent 3 years pulling all-nighters, rewriting code, and pitching my idea to rooms full of people who barely looked up from their phones. I stopped bringing up my work after that. It just felt pointless. Fast forward to this past summer. My grandma was turning 80, and my parents were throwing a big celebration at a rented estate about 2 hours outside the city. Fancy caterers, floral centerpieces, a string quartet during appetizers. They were going all out, and of course, Brielle was at the center of it. She'd flown in from Milan the day before and posted a boomerang of the champagne bottle popping before she even stepped off the plane. When I showed up in my regular button-down and slacks, she looked me up and down and said, "You didn't get the memo? The vibe is European summer garden party. This is giving dentist appointment." I laughed it off. I always did. That's the thing about growing up next to someone like Brielle. You learn to play the background. Let her have the attention. Let her be the star. But that night, something shifted. Maybe it was the wine. Maybe it was the way she leaned over to whisper something in Lucas's ear and both of them laughed, clearly at my expense. Or maybe I'd just had enough. Dinner was this long, winding ordeal with 7 courses and 3 different wine pairings. My grandma sat at the head of the table in this oversized velvet chair like the matriarch of some old money dynasty. She always had this regal air about her, even though she lived in the same 2-bedroom condo for the last 30 years. My dad made a toast. My mom cried. Brielle gave a speech that sounded like it was written by her PR manager. Everyone clapped and cooed and dabbed their eyes with linen napkins. And then it happened. Someone, I think it was Aunt Trish, asked what I'd been up to lately. It was one of those throwaway questions, the kind you ask because you feel guilty for not knowing. I could have shrugged it off, said same old, and let the conversation drift back to safer waters. But for some reason, I didn't. Instead, I said, well, my company just hit 7 figures in revenue. Forbes did a piece on us last month. Silence. I wish I could say it was the proud kind of silence. The type that comes right before applause or a warm smile from your dad. But no, it was more like everyone collectively tilted their heads, unsure if they heard me right. My grandma blinked. My dad's face froze in a half-smile. And Brielle? She full-on snorted into her champagne. Wait, 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 she said, holding up a hand like she was stopping traffic. Forbes? As in the Forbes? I nodded. Yeah, it's just a spotlight piece in their under 30 section. Nothing huge, but Grandma started laughing. Not chuckling, not giggling, laughing. Like the deep belly, slap the table kind of laugh you'd expect from someone watching a stand-up routine. And then she said the thing that burned itself into my brain. Oh, Dylan, don't be ridiculous. You can't just say things like that. We know you're trying, sweetheart, but let's be realistic. I didn't know what to say. My face went hot. Everyone else seemed frozen, unsure whether to laugh with her or wait to see if I was serious. And that's when I pulled out my phone. I opened the article, 7 Young Founders Disrupting the Tech Industry in 2025, and scrolled until my picture showed up. Me in a hoodie, arms crossed, standing in the co-working space I could finally afford to rent. I turned the phone around and held it up, letting the silence hang. That's when things really started to unravel. Grandma's laughter stopped cold. Her eyes narrowed. She reached out like she wanted to push the phone away, and when I didn't lower it, she slapped her fork onto the plate with a metallic clang. My dad jolted upright and barked, "That's enough, Dylan," like I'd just pulled a prank on national television. My mom was already whispering something to Brielle, who looked bored, like this entire scene was interrupting her Instagram story. I should have backed down. I should have taken the cue and let it go. But something in me cracked. And then, I said it. I said the one thing that changed everything. The one thing that made my grandmother stand up so fast her chair toppled backward. The one thing that made Brielle go pale. The one thing I'd been holding back for years. But before I tell you what it was, before I explain what really set the room on fire, you have to understand what led me there. Because this wasn't just about a magazine article. It wasn't even about money or success. It was about years of being overlooked. Years of swallowing it down. Years of playing the quiet one while everyone else got to shine. I think the exact moment something broke inside me was when my dad, who hadn't said a single nice thing about my work in years, slammed his palm on the table and said, "Don't disrespect your grandmother like that." Not in a "this is inappropriate" tone. Not in a "let's talk later" tone. It was sharp, accusing, like I'd just spat in her face instead of sharing something I was proud of. I hadn't raised my voice. I hadn't mocked anyone. I hadn't even gone looking for praise. All I'd done was answer a question. One single question about what I was working on. And yet, there I was, being scolded like a child in front of 30 people because what? Because it made Brielle uncomfortable that someone else might get a minute in the spotlight? Because Grandma couldn't stomach the idea that her quiet little Dylan might have actually built something that didn't fit into her narrative? I sat back in my chair, stunned. My heart was hammering in my chest, but I kept my voice low. I didn't disrespect anyone, I said, trying to keep my tone steady. I was just answering a question. No one asked for a speech. Brielle chimed in, swirling her wine like some real housewife of Westchester. This isn't a TED Talk, Dylan. I could feel the table tightening around me, eyes flicking between each other, fake smiles trying to patch over the tension like duct tape on a leaking dam. I looked to my mom, hoping, just hoping, she might step in. Say something, anything. But she just gave me that tight, apologetic smile she always used. The one that said, "Please don't make a scene. Not tonight. Not again." And that's when I realized. That smile? That's all I'd ever get. For years, I convinced myself they didn't mean it. That the favoritism was just something I was imagining. That maybe Brielle needed more support. That maybe I was the quiet one, the independent one, the one who didn't need as much hand-holding. But in that moment, staring at my mom's polite nothing face while my grandmother glared at me like I'd defiled her birthday party, I finally saw it for what it was. They'd chosen her. A long time ago. And no matter what I did, how much I built, how far I climbed, it would never be enough to change that. I looked down at my plate. The roast was cold. The asparagus was untouched. My appetite had shriveled up like the last 10 years of pretending I didn't care. Then my dad said something I'll never forget. "She's done so much more with her life, Dylan. You should learn from her." I blinked. I actually blinked, like maybe I heard him wrong. Learn what exactly? I asked, my voice low but shaky. How to marry rich at 22. How to fake brand deals on Instagram. How to get a $10,000 monthly allowance and call it hustle. Brielle's face snapped toward me like a whip. Her eyes widened, and for the first time that night, she didn't have a smirk. That's enough, my dad said, standing up now. We're not doing this. But I wasn't done. Not even close. Because while I was working 2 jobs to build my company, while I was sleeping on a friend's couch and skipping meals, she was blowing 10 grand a month on imported skincare and $1,000 dinners. And you applauded it. Every step of the way. Don't talk to your sister like that, Mom said quietly, finally breaking her silence. But that only made me laugh. I couldn't help it. It was bitter and joyless and sharp. Of course, God forbid we hold Brielle accountable for anything. God forbid she face 1 ounce of criticism. But me? I sneeze in the wrong direction and it's Dylan. Don't ruin the mood. She's just better at being part of this family, Grandma said suddenly. And I swear to you, she said it like it was a fact. Like it was the most obvious truth in the world. My breath caught. I actually sat back, stunned. Better. She brings people together. She's graceful. She doesn't make things about herself. That one almost made me laugh again, except this time it hurt too much. I looked across the table at my sister, draped in a silk dress that probably cost more than my first car, eyes wide and full of fake innocence. She wasn't graceful. She wasn't kind. She was just louder. Louder, shinier, and easier to worship. Lucas, her fiancé, leaned over and muttered, "Maybe don't turn a birthday party into a therapy session, bro." And that did it. I stood up. I didn't shout. I didn't throw anything. I just stood there, gripping the back of my chair so hard my knuckles turned white. You know what? I'm done trying, I said. I've been trying for years. Trying to be part of this family. Trying to share things with you. Trying to earn something. Your respect. Your support. Anything. But it's always been a one-way street. I show up. I stay quiet. I play the part. And for what? I looked around the table, and no one would meet my eyes. None of you even asked what my company does. You all just assumed I was lying. That I made it up. Because God forbid I actually succeed at something. Because success doesn't come from bitterness, Grandma snapped. No, I said quietly. It comes from being seen. And then I dropped it. The thing I'd been holding back for months. The thing I swore I wouldn't say because I knew what it would do to her. Brielle didn't find Lucas. Mom did. The silence was instant. Palpable. Brielle froze. Her glass of wine hovered in midair. My mother's face went pale. "Dylan," she whispered. "Don't." But I kept going. "She set you up, didn't she?" I said, eyes locked on my sister. "Told him to take you out. Told him how fragile you were. How much you needed someone to take care of you. And Lucas, well, he was bored and rich and probably thought it'd be fun to play knight in shining armor." "That's not true," Brielle said quickly, but her voice cracked. "Oh, it's true. You told me yourself after your 3rd date. You thought it was weird at first, remember? You were creeped out that he already knew your favorite drink and how you wanted to go to Bali." I turned to my mom. "You fed him the lines. Just like you always do. Because you don't think she can stand on her own." "I did it for her," my mom said. "She needed someone. She was struggling. She was 20. She had panic attacks, Dylan. And I had no health insurance." I shot back. "But nobody set me up with a rich spouse." There it was. The moment the room shifted. Grandma stood up so fast her chair screeched across the floor. Her face was red. Her eyes were narrowed. She looked like she was about to throw something, and then she did. Her fork. She flung it. A silver blur sailing across the table. It didn't hit me. It landed with a loud clang against the tiled floor, but that didn't matter. The message was clear. "Get out," she hissed. "You selfish little brat." And then Dad stood too. "I told you enough. You ruin everything you touch. You couldn't let her have one night." That's when I felt it. That twist in my chest. Not pain exactly, but something deeper. Like a wire snapping after being pulled too tight for too long. I met his gaze. Calm. Flat. "Say that again." He didn't. But he didn't apologize either. And so I said it. I said the thing that finally made my sister cry. The thing that tore the last shred of fake peace off this family like a bandage over a festering wound. And I watched her face crumble. But I'll get to that. Because before I said it, I thought about everything that came before. Every missed birthday. Every text left on read. Every time they asked if I was still doing that tech thing. Every time Brielle got celebrated for showing up while I got ignored for building something from nothing. That was the breaking point. That was when I stopped trying to be polite. When I stopped begging to be seen. And when I finally showed them who I'd become. I didn't sleep that night. After everything. The yelling, the fork, my grandmother's venom, my father's outburst. I left the party without saying another word. I walked out into the cool night air, the estate lights glowing behind me like a spotlight on a stage I never wanted to be on. I didn't even take my car. I walked a mile down the dark country road and ordered an Uber, hands shaking as I replayed it all in my head. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't feel anything, really. Just empty. And that emptiness stuck with me for weeks. Back in the city, my apartment felt colder than usual. The walls, once buzzing with the energy of late-night work sessions and startup dreams, now felt sterile. Like the ambition had drained out of the air. I tried to work, but my mind kept drifting, back to Grandma's sneer, Dad's voice, Brielle's fake surprise. Every little comment, every slight I had let slide over the years, suddenly surged to the surface. I started doubting everything. Not just them, but myself. Had I built anything real? Or was it all just smoke and mirrors? Maybe they were right. Maybe I had been trying to show off. Maybe I was bitter. Was I just chasing validation from people who'd never give it? For the first time in years, I opened my analytics dashboard and stared at it without feeling a thing. 7 figures in revenue. A growing team. Press mentions. Investors texting me congratulations. Clients who said we changed their businesses. And yet all I could hear was, she's better at being part of this family. I didn't return texts. I skipped meetings. I ignored calls from my mom. Though to be fair, they weren't daily anymore. Just 1 or 2 hesitant check-ins that I let ring until voicemail. I think part of me was waiting. Waiting for someone to say they were sorry. Waiting for someone, anyone, to acknowledge what happened that night. But days turned to weeks, and nothing came. Even Lucas sent me a DM on Instagram. Something vague like, "Hope you cool off, bro," before posting a selfie with Brielle in Lake Como the next day. I hit rock bottom 2 weeks after the dinner. It was a Tuesday. Rainy. I hadn't left the apartment in 4 days. DoorDash bags littered the counter. My inbox had 200 unread emails. I sat in the middle of my living room floor, phone in hand, staring at a photo from the party someone had posted on Facebook. Everyone was smiling. Brielle, front and center, radiant in gold. Dad by her side. Grandma beaming. The caption read, "Celebrating 80 beautiful years with family and love." And I wasn't in a single one of the photos. It was like I'd been erased. That broke something in me all over again. But this time, it wasn't sadness that rose up. It wasn't pain. It was something deeper. Sharper. Not rage. Not bitterness. Clarity. They weren't going to give me closure. They weren't going to say sorry. They weren't even going to pretend I existed anymore, unless I played along. So I stopped waiting. That night, I took a long shower, cleaned the apartment, turned off my phone, and sat down with a notebook, not a laptop, not a tablet, just pen and paper. I wrote down everything. Not the pain, not the memories, but the facts, my numbers, my plans, my roadmap, the way I had quietly built my company from scratch, the wins I never told them about, the features we were launching, the traction, the feedback, the letters from customers who said our product saved them time, money, sanity. And then I wrote down something else, something harder, why I built it. I didn't start my company to prove anything to my family. I started it because I needed to, because I had a vision, because the traditional path didn't work for me, because I wanted to build something that was mine, not borrowed, not gifted, not handed to me in a box wrapped with money and favors, something I earned. And I had. They just didn't want to see it. The next morning, I showed up to my office. My team, a scrappy crew of 8, was surprised to see me in early. They had no idea what I'd been dealing with. They didn't know I'd gone dark for days. All they knew was that I was back. So I poured myself into the work. Over the next 2 months, we launched 3 major updates. I personally wrote the copy for our landing page refresh. I started replying to support tickets again, one by one, just to remember what our users needed. I jumped on client calls, took meetings with potential investors, declined half of them because we didn't need the money anymore. And quietly, something strange started to happen. The emptiness faded. Every time I shipped a new feature, every time we hit a milestone, I felt a little stronger. Not because anyone was watching, but because I was proud of what I was building. even if no one at that dinner table ever saw it. I went for runs again, started cooking my own meals, spent time with friends I hadn't seen in months, reconnected with my mentor, the guy who helped me start this whole journey when I was 20 and dead broke, sleeping on a futon. He reminded me of who I was before I let my family's silence shape me. Success doesn't feel like success, he told me, if the people you love won't recognize it. But that doesn't make it any less real. That stuck with me. It didn't happen overnight, but I slowly stopped checking my family's social media. I muted Brielle's account, archived the party photos, blocked Lucas, not out of hate, but to reclaim space in my own mind. Then, in early fall, something wild happened. I got invited to speak at a tech conference in Austin. I wasn't a big name on the list, not even close, but I was slotted between two rising founders. The panel was called Building Without Backing, Bootstrap Success Stories. And I crushed it. Afterwards, a guy from one of the VC firms came up to me and said, "I heard about your app from my niece. She says it changed the way her team works." He handed me his card. That night, alone in my hotel room, I looked out over the skyline and realized I hadn't thought about Grandma's party in almost a week. I was rising. Not fast, not flashy, but steady, real. And the best part? I didn't need anyone to clap. But of course, life has a way of circling back. You can build your world far away from the ones who broke you, but eventually, inevitably, they come knocking. The knock came in the form of an email. From Brielle. Subject line: "Need your help. Please read." I stared at it for a long time. I hadn't heard from her in 3 months. Not a word. Not a text. Not even a like on a post. And now this? My stomach twisted. I clicked it open. The message was short. "Hey Dylan, I know this is random, but I could really use your advice. Something happened and I didn't know who else to ask. Please don't delete this. Can we talk?" No context. No apology. No mention of the dinner. Just that. Vague, desperate, dangling. I didn't know what to think. Had something happened? Was she okay? Was this another game? I didn't reply. Not yet. But I didn't delete it either. And that night, as I stared at the glowing screen in my dark apartment, I felt something I hadn't expected to feel again. Not pain. Not rage. Not even pity. Power. For the first time in my life, I was on the other side of the silence. And she knew it. What she didn't know, what none of them knew, was how much I'd changed since that night. How the fall hadn't broken me. How the silence had taught me something far more valuable than approval. It taught me who I was when nobody clapped. But if you think that's where the story ends, you're wrong. Because when I finally agreed to meet with her, she told me something that flipped everything upside down. And it made me realize this wasn't over. Not even close. She chose a little cafe in Midtown. Neutral ground. Quiet. Not the kind of place we used to go to as kids, and definitely not one of the rooftop champagne spots she usually tagged on her Instagram stories. Just 4 tables, brick walls, and coffee served in mismatched mugs. It almost felt intentional, like she wanted to strip away the image, pretend for a moment she was someone else. I got there 10 minutes early. That was always my thing. She showed up 10 minutes late. That was always hers. When she walked in, I almost didn't recognize her. Not because she looked bad. Brielle never looked bad. But because she looked smaller. No makeup, dark circles under her eyes, oversized hoodie that swallowed her frame. She didn't even straighten her hair. "Hey," she said, sliding into the seat across from me. No hug. No fake cheer. Just that single syllable, and a look that was more nervous than I'd ever seen on her face. I nodded. The silence between us felt like a wall. Not tension. Just weight. A history too big to name in a single breath. She fiddled with a packet of sugar until it tore in half, granules spilling across the table. "I'm guessing you're wondering why I reached out," she finally said. I had a few guesses. She gave a dry laugh. "Yeah, probably all of them better than the real reason." I didn't say anything, just waited. Then she took a breath and said it. "Lucas left." 3 words. That was it. But they hit like a car crash. 2 weeks ago, she added quickly, like filling the space would make it hurt less. Just packed up and disappeared. Told me over text. Said he needed to reclaim his identity, or whatever. Blocked me on everything the next day. I blinked. Not because I was shocked he left. If anything, I was shocked he stuck around that long. But because of how she said it. Flat. Hollow. Like she hadn't processed it yet. "I'm sorry," I said. And to my surprise, I meant it. She nodded slowly. It's been rough. Another long silence. And I asked finally, what does that have to do with me? She looked down at her hands, then back up. Her eyes were glassy. Because it wasn't just a breakup, Dylan. It was everything. The money, the apartment, the travel, the security. It was all his. I didn't even realize how much I depended on him until it was gone. I stayed quiet. I had to move out last week. Back in with Mom and Dad. She gave a bitter laugh. You can imagine how that's going. Oh, I could. They're being polite for now. Like I'm some refugee they're trying to host until I can find my footing. But you know how long that'll last. I did. I didn't need to imagine my dad's passive-aggressive quips or Mom's smothering silence. I'd lived it. And Grandma? I asked. She flinched. Worse. She acts like I failed her. Like I embarrassed the family name or something. Told me I should have locked it down before Lucas changed his mind. Charming. She nodded. She's been pushing me to get back into influencer stuff. Build a brand. Start a YouTube. Try to revive the glow up, whatever that means. I waited a moment before speaking. So, you called me because you want a job? No, she said quickly. Not a job. Just advice. Guidance. I know you hate me, and I don't blame you. But you built something. From nothing. And she paused, her voice catching. I don't know who I am without the stuff. The photos. The places. The people. I don't even know what I'm good at. There it was. Raw. Unfiltered. The most honest thing I'd heard her say in years. I leaned back and took a breath. Part of me wanted to end it there. Wish her luck and walk away. She'd laughed when I brought up my company. Mocked me in front of the whole family. Let them all believe I was exaggerating or lying. And now she was asking for help. But the other part of me, the quieter part, saw something I hadn't expected. Leverage. Not the cruel, manipulative kind, but the strategic kind. The kind you use not to hurt, but to shift the story. Because for the first time in our lives, she was the one asking. And I wasn't going to waste that moment. So I leaned forward. You want guidance? I asked. She nodded. Then here's the first rule, I said. If you want to rebuild, you have to let the old version of yourself die. Her eyes widened slightly. I'm serious. You don't get to play both sides. You can't chase sympathy while clinging to the old image. You can't be humbled and still flex for likes. You want to start over? Then burn the old playbook. She hesitated, then nodded again. Slowly this time. Like she knew I was right. I sipped my coffee and waited. And that's when she told me the rest. About how Lucas wasn't just her fiancé, he was her financial pipeline. His name was on everything. The lease. The bank accounts. Even the car. She had no savings, no plan, no backup. The sponsorships had dried up months ago when her engagement story stopped trending. She was broke. Completely. But it was what she said next that made me sit up. I didn't just come to you for advice, she said. I came because Grandma's been talking. My stomach tightened. About what? She's planning something. A fundraiser. A gala or something ridiculous for the foundation. But it's not just that. She's trying to position herself as this philanthropic legend, using me as the face. She wants me to redeem myself by stepping into the spotlight again. Play the fallen angel who found her way back to grace. I frowned. Why you? Because her real granddaughter fell off the pedestal and now she needs a project. And because she can control me right now. I'm weak. I'm vulnerable. She smells it. I leaned back, gears turning. That sounded exactly like Grandma. Not helping out of love. Helping out of optics. Using her granddaughter's crisis to polish her legacy. And what do you want from me? I asked carefully. She hesitated, then leaned in. I want out. I want to get out of that house. Out from under her, out of all of it. I want to rebuild, but on my own terms this time. No sugar daddies. No fake friends. No family image management. Her voice broke. I want to be something real. Like you. For a moment, I didn't know what to say. And then a plan started to take shape. Because I realized something in that moment. Something I hadn't seen until now. This gala Grandma was planning. This fundraiser. It wasn't just a social event. It was a stage. And not for Brielle. For me. For years, they kept me out of the spotlight. Ignored my work. Erased me from the narrative. But now I had a chance to step into the light. With Brielle on my side, I had access to the plans, the invite list, the donors, the speeches, everything. And if I played it right, I could expose everything they'd done. Every lie, every manipulation. Not in a petty way, not with anger, but with truth. And maybe, just maybe, I could reclaim my place. Not in their eyes, but in my own story. So I nodded slowly. All right, I said. I'll help you, but not for free. She blinked. What do you mean? I mean, if we're going to do this, we do it together. No secrets. No bailouts. You help me. I help you. We build something real. But you have to be all in. She nodded. I am. I leaned forward. Then here's what we're going to do. And as I laid out the first steps of the plan, how we'd prepare, what we'd uncover, and how we'd use Grandma's gala as the perfect setup, Brielle sat in stunned silence. Because what I had in mind wasn't just about revenge. It was about rewriting the entire narrative they thought they controlled. And the best part? They'd never see it coming. Not from me, and especially not from her. But to pull it off, we'd need perfect timing, and one very public moment to change everything. And that was coming sooner than they thought. The gala was set for the third Saturday in November. Grandma called it the Radiance Ball, a name so drenched in artificial grandeur it practically begged for an eye roll. It was hosted at the Glass House downtown, with sweeping views of the skyline and seating for 200. Black tie only. Press invited. A glossy pamphlet sent to every guest with a message from philanthropic matriarch Eleanor Bishop and her elegant granddaughter, Brielle. She even had a tagline, restoring grace through legacy. It was such a lie it made my teeth hurt. For weeks, Brielle played her part perfectly. She sat through fittings and rehearsals, accepted the flattery, nodded through Grandma's backhanded advice. And I watched, quietly, helping her build a different kind of plan behind the scenes. We met late at night, long after she was home from image prep sessions and strategic photo shoots. She'd come by my place in sweats, hair pulled up, face wiped clean, just Brielle. Not the persona, not the brand. And little by little, we built it. I'd created a private document, the Bishop Archive, password protected, cloud-based, time-stamped, a living dossier of everything we'd uncovered. Bank transfers, name-dropping emails, deleted PR pitches, and most importantly, recordings. Brielle started carrying a tiny mic clipped into her phone case. Legal in our state, as long as one party consents. I taught her how to bait the conversation gently, guide it to places where Grandma would speak freely. And oh, did she? Just smile and do what I tell you, dear. You owe me for that ring. Don't forget that. Don't let anyone think you're struggling. We don't reward weakness in this family. Dylan's always been so plain. He doesn't have the sparkle. That's why I had to put all my effort into you. Every recording, more damning than the last. Brielle cried after the first time we listened to one together. Not from surprise, but from recognition. She had heard these words her whole life. It was just the first time she truly listened. 2 days before the gala, we finalized the plan. Brielle would arrive with Grandma, smiling for the cameras. She'd wear the champagne silk gown that Eleanor insisted on. She'd stand by her side for the opening speech. Let her believe, for one last moment, that she was still in control. Then, at exactly 8:35 p.m., the AV technician I hired, an old college buddy, would swap the slideshow. Not to the glossy family legacy video Grandma had commissioned, but to the archive. Clips, quotes, truths. Brielle would step up to the mic, take off her heels, and tell her story. Calmly, fully, unapologetically. And me? I'd be in the front row, watching, waiting, finally seen. The night of the gala, the glass house sparkled like a chandelier. Waiters floated between crystal tables with trays of Prosecco. A jazz quartet played near the balcony. Brielle and Grandma made their grand entrance to a flutter of camera shutters and claps from the old money crowd. I kept my distance, mingled quietly, talked with a few donors I recognized from the business circuit. Everyone assumed I was just a guest. Grandma didn't even notice me. Perfect. Brielle kept the act up flawlessly. She posed with Eleanor, smiled through the small talk. She even gave a pre-written introduction speech praising the strength of generational support and the wisdom of family. It was surreal watching her do it. Not because I doubted her, but because I never thought she could be this strong, this sharp, this in control of the narrative. And maybe, neither had she. When the lights dimmed for the video presentation, Eleanor took center stage. Her voice echoed over the sound system, full of pride and practiced emotion. Tonight, we celebrate not just a foundation, but a legacy. One built on resilience, grace, and unity. A family united by love and purpose. I tapped my phone. In the tech booth, my friend got the signal. The screen behind her flickered once. Then again. Then everything changed. The gala video cut out. The screen turned black. And a new voice filled the room. It was Grandma. From 2 weeks earlier. She was useless before Lucas. I gave her a narrative. She owes me everything. Murmurs rippled through the room. Another clip. Dylan? Please. He's just noise. He got some silly article and now thinks he's important. That boy has always craved attention. More murmurs. People turning to each other. Faces tightening. Then came the emails. Screenshots. Letters. Proof of Eleanor's manipulation. Documents showing how she redirected foundation funds to her personal accounts under event reimbursements. Audio of her bragging about using Brielle's image to secure a fresh PR angle. The room fell into stunned silence. And then Brielle walked to the mic. Barefoot. Poised. Her voice was steady. I let this happen. For years, I let someone else decide who I was. I thought if I played the part well enough, maybe I'd be loved. Maybe I'd be safe. Maybe I'd be seen. She paused. But I'm not playing anymore. Her eyes scanned the crowd. I was never the graceful granddaughter. I was scared. I was small. And I let someone else use my face to build a lie. But that ends tonight. Because behind every fake smile was a truth I was too afraid to name. She gestured to the screen. Here it is. And then she stepped away. No tears. No tantrums. Just silence and steel. Grandma stood frozen. Face pale. Lips moving, but no words coming out. For the first time, she looked old. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. But then she hissed at Brielle. You stupid, ungrateful child. And that sealed it. Brielle walked off the stage. Head held high. People began leaving in waves. Some quietly. Some not. Donors whispering to one another. Reporters already typing. One of the board members stood up and demanded to see the foundation's financials by morning. Grandma didn't leave the stage. She couldn't. She just stood there, a relic exposed. And me? I walked right past her. Didn't say a word. Didn't need to. She turned to follow me with her eyes, but I didn't look back. I caught up to Brielle outside, where the city lights flickered like 1,000 blinking cameras. She stood barefoot on the sidewalk, heels in hand, shaking slightly from the cold or adrenaline. We didn't speak right away. Then she said, Think she'll ever talk to me again? I thought about it. Maybe, but not as the same person. That version of you's gone. She nodded. Good. We split a cab back to my apartment. She crashed on my couch, like old times. No pretenses. No makeup. Just my sister, finally real. The fallout was fast. The foundation was audited. 3 board members resigned. The story hit local media, then national. A few of the juicier clips made it onto Twitter, trending under legacy fall. Grandma went silent. Retreated to her estate upstate. Dad tried calling. I let it go to voicemail. Mom wrote a long email. Half apology, half plea. I responded with one line. When you're ready to see both your children, I'm here. As for Brielle, she got offered a podcast. Not for drama, but for storytelling. She turned it down. Instead, she started a blog. 1 post a week. No sponsors. No filters. Just her voice. Honest. Raw. And people loved it. As for me, well, I stopped building for approval. Started building for impact. My company doubled in value. We opened a second office. Forbes reached out for a follow-up. I said yes, but insisted they use a photo of my entire team this time. Because no one builds alone. Especially not someone like me. Someone who was once invisible. Someone who learned that silence isn't strength, and that being overlooked is just the beginning of being underestimated. I thought revenge would taste sweeter than this. But it didn't need to. Because it wasn't about bringing anyone down. It was about standing up. And being seen. Finally. Completely. And forever.